the D-line, interior D lineman, where are you right now with that?
Well, I think I made it pretty clear in a number of the press conferences that I had that we were in the market in recruiting in the transfer portal looking for defensive linemen. It hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, because we're selling something a little bit differently, and that is we want to recruit. We want to engage, build relationships. We want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players, and unfortunately, right now, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. And look, I understand NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective. We have very, very generous opportunities around the greater Baton Rouge area for NIL opportunities. So they are here, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. This was never about that. We will develop you. We will get you ready for the next step, as we did with Jaden Daniels, as we did with Malik Neighbors, as we did with Brian Thomas. We developed 3 defensive linemen that all got drafted this year, and we'll do that again. But if you're just looking to get paid, you're looking in the wrong place.
All right, let's officially welcome in Bryce Koon of Go 24/7. Now, Bryce, we're on the internet here. We have no time restrictions, so we intentionally wanted to drag that quote out as long as possible to give all the necessary context, because, as you know, it's been circulating everywhere, and everybody just wants to focus on the quote, "We are not in the market of buying players." From your perspective, Bryce, what did Brian Kelly mean to say here?
Well, first off, I'm glad that you played the longevity of that quote, gave it some length, because like you said, it's been taken out of context. But look, Brian Kelly, in my mind, is saying what a lot of other coaches are thinking across the country. Probably 129, 130 other FBS coaches are thinking, we don't want to be in the market of just buying players. We have to have a roster that, one, is going to be able to be fruitful in high school recruiting. We're going to be able to develop those young men from freshmen, sophomores into juniors, and maybe senior years as well, and see them play on Sundays. So face value, Emily, I don't have a massive problem with what he's trying to say here. The problem is that LSU has a massive hole, a massive gap at the defensive tackle, interior defensive line position. They knew in January, when they didn't hit on some of those winter portal targets, they were going to have to hit on some of the guys in the spring portal. So it's kind of a mixed reaction. I understand what he's trying to say. He's trying to say he wants to build LSU as a program that has longevity, has continuity. He doesn't want to be a major player in the portal every single year. The problem is you had a massive need. You were desperate entering the spring portal, and so far you've come up empty.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest issue here is, again, that's why we did the full context of the quote, including the question as well. This was originally about the defensive line and their need to shore up that position in the spring. So looking at the defensive line room right now, I mean, how desperate were they?
Yeah, I mean, look, you look at the 2 entries that he mentioned into the NFL draft with Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith. A lot of folks feel that they kind of put their eggs in a basket thinking that was going to be at least one of those guys coming back to anchor that room. Now, you return a guy like Jacobian Guillory, who the staff is excited about, people around the program are excited about, and I think fans see as a guy that can be a pillar along the front 7 in general, not just interior defensive line. The problem is you rolled into a spring game in your 2 deep, giving a lot of playing time to walk-ons. That's not something that you can roll into an SEC slate and a really heavy out-of-conference slate in the fall of 2024 and expect to be better than what was one of the worst defenses in LSU history. So it is a desperate need. They are still searching in the portal. They have swung and missed on a couple of big targets here. And as Brian Kelly indicated, he felt that it was a kind of pay-to-play type of deal. They wanted money up front, and Brian Kelly was not willing to play that game. Once again, it's kind of the world of social media we live in. It's taken by storm, and it's one of those things where this is a part of the game. I think it is a good viewpoint. It's just maybe not realistic for where we are in the college football world right now.
And he admitted as much as so in that question. He said, we're not in the market of buying players, but players want to be bought. So what sort of message does this send to recruits both through the transfer portal and high school?
Well, at the high school ranks, you start to kind of look at what they're building. And that 2025 class, look, it's a fun one, and it's one that makes fans really excited, but it lacks defensive high-end talent. It's a lot of big names on the offensive side of the football. So NIL spending when it comes to high school talent, it feels like that's where Brian Kelly is more wanting to go with this. We want to invest in you at a young age. We want to develop you and have that bonding connection so we can have that retention factor and keep you year in, year out. Now, for the transfer portal, I mean, look, this is the market. The market dictates whether you believe or not that it should be certain figures that have been thrown around. That's what the market dictates. That's what these young men are able to get. So it's really just a question of whether you want to play in that space or not. And it comes back to the fact that LSU has that desperate need. They need to fill a gap there, and they were just unwilling to pony up. And so that message to recruits is, hey, you're not going to be able to cash in on a payday like some other schools that are maybe more willing to throw around some money. And you can look across the country and see where those programs come into play.
I feel like this segment is in the spirit of context and adding as much as possible, which is, of course, why we go to the source. You're there, you're around, not just listening to these recruits and coaches and understanding the context behind this question and this quote that has really snowballed since he said it just a few days ago. So what do the fans think about this when they hear that? I feel like a few years ago when it came to NIL before it became legal, fans took kind of source of pride in that, well, we don't have to pay for players. They just want to come play for our team. But now you got to play the game. So what's the reaction been like from fans?
Well, the reaction, you kind of alluded to it, is you should want to come play for LSU. The brand value that the purple and gold holds, the yellow helmet, the pageantry of what Tiger Stadium and Death Valley bring, that's still prevalent in recruits' minds. But, was talking with some people the other day, and they kind of hinted at this. It's kind of a twofold recruitment. You can still win recruiting battles with pageantry, with tradition, with recognition in the NFL. But there's a second recruitment that comes into the NIL factor, and that's the one that I think the fans are most worried about is when other programs like a Georgia, an Alabama, a Florida State, Ohio State, USC, and many others, Texas, in fact, are pitching the same thing, that pageantry, that challenge, that tradition that you have. It's often going to come to the other side of the coin. And so the fans' reaction is, is there disorganization? Is there NIL funds? Are they being allocated correctly? Is there organization of NIL in whole? And so, like you said, it's taken on a world of its own here, over the past 48, 72 hours. And so the fan reaction, as we would expect it to be, has been one of worrisome. It's been of concern and worry about that pivotal year 3 that I know we're going to talk about later in the show. Brian Kelly enters where he talked about this is the building year that they've been mounting up to. Well, it looks like it could be in jeopardy if you can't fix this defensive line.
Yes, and you talked a lot about how the future when it comes to this defense, bringing in some recruits and that there's still kind of a need for that in this 2025 class. But I know LSU fans want to know, what the heck is this defense going to look like in 2024? You bring in a new defensive coordinator. You bring in some more pieces, maybe not as many as you would have liked on the defensive line. But I want to ask you this question because Brad Crawford, who's going to be on the show a little bit later, actually wrote about this on 247sports.com, saying that you should buy stock in LSU's defense this upcoming fall. I'm not going to ask you necessarily if you agree with that, but what should fans maybe get excited about in this revamped LSUD?
Well, I mean, look, when you look at Blake Baker, the new defensive coordinator, his pedigree and what he wants to do, obviously it aligns with Harold Perkins, the star linebacker, and for a lot of people, a first-round draft pick in the 2025 draft. It aligns with him being the most effective. That was an issue all last year. If Blake Baker can find that piece, if he can find where Harold Perkins is the best, that's going to unlock a lot of things, and it will settle some things down on that front seven. I mentioned Jacoby and Guillory, a veteran guy. It feels like that he is a name that is going to have to rise to the occasion. They went to the JUCO route to get a guy like Sean Washington. They also have Jalen Lee, a former Florida transfer that's going to try to be, take the next step in his development in terms of playing more meaningful snaps. But defensively, it's obviously going to come down to the back end as well. You have a lot of faces. You have a true freshman corner that really shone brightly in the spring game in P.J. Woodland. Is he out there in a necessity, or is he the real deal? And it's a lot of things we're going to be able to learn about as we get into fall camp. There's a lot of young talent, But, what I imagine Brad's getting at with that column is the coaching staff. This coaching staff, and many people around believe, is probably one of the better defensive, cohesive staffs in the country. Now, can they get it to where they need to be? Can they match the gap? That's going to be one of the big questions of the offseason. It's going to be one of the big questions heading into fall camp and obviously heading into Las Vegas when they take on USC.
We will find out very quickly. Talk about two teams going head-to-head with question marks as to whether or not they have upgraded their defenses this offseason. Bryce, thank you for being here and for the nice level-headed take. It was good to have a nice, normal conversation about this quote. It's been pretty crazy this week, I'm sure. You can read more of his work at Go247. That is the place to be for all things LSU recruiting and football-related news. Also, my basketball and baseball fans, you will find a lot to like there, so check it out at Go247.com.